Welcome to Books We Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jason.
And this is episode 8 of our weekly book club covering Death's End by Cixin Liu, parts 1 and 2.
Yep. This is book 3 of the Remembrance of Earth's Past series. So if you have not read the first 2 books or the first part of this book, I suggest you go back and do that. And then if you have done those, but you haven't watched our other videos discussing those books, I definitely suggest that you go back and do that because we might talk about some concepts that we've discussed in some of those previous videos, and we'd be happy to have you along.
Yep, that's all playlisted for you in the playlist section of our channel. And please, comment, like, subscribe, do all those things. And that way you stay tuned for all of our activities, like when we move out of this book and into the next book.
We're only in this series for another 2 weeks, and then we're picking something totally different. And we're really hoping that people will follow along. There's been a lot more interaction on our channel over the last week, which has been a lot of fun for us. We're just doing this because we're enjoying reading this book together and talking about it. And the fact that anybody enjoys this at all really tickles us. And so we're having a great time talking to everyone. And even the number of people in my personal life who have come up and told me, like, hey, we're reading this book and we're so excited that y'all are doing this. It's really been nice.
It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. It's really cool getting to hear everyone's perspectives. So
for sure.
Well, with that,
are we hopping right in?
Let's hop right in.
Ooh. We got stuff going on.
Okay. We loved book 1 of the series.
Yep.
It was great. I can't even tell you who the main character was that was like sidekicked with Dasha anymore. But we loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
Book 2 was incredible. I mean, it was just incredible. Book 3!
Yeah. I definitely, you get these trilogies, and you and I have had conversations about how oftentimes the middle book will be a weak book.
Yeah.
But book 2 it was, for me, better than book 3. I mean, better than book 1. And book 3 looks like it's building to be better than book 2.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
But 1 and 2 formed this incredible foundation for this universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that book 3, we have so much context for what's going on. It's so brilliant the way that he planned everything and the way that he's organized it. Also brilliant is his use of setting and world building. Yeah. And we can get to that in a minute. I've got some notes on that. But the very beginning of book 3 poses a question for me.
Okay.
So
let's do it.
As we read parts 1 and 2 of book 3, there's just tons of tiny chapters. And some of these chapters are from a text called A Past Outside of Time. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't noticed the prologue of this book until after I was done reading parts 1 and 2, and I had flipped back to that, and I realized how personal and journal-esque that prologue sounds. Mm-hmm. Who is writing?
Do you have any notes about what you're talking about?
A Past Outside of Time. Well, I just have it pulled up here, but I suppose this ought to be called history, but since all I can rely on is my memory, it lacks the rigor of history.
Oh, interesting.
It's not even accurate to call it the past, for the events related in these pages didn't occur in the past, aren't taking place now, and will not happen in the future.
Huh.
Alright, so I recommend, if you also had forgotten about the prologue, go back and check it out. Okay, and then it ends with, I move the sun to the west, and as the angle of the light shifts, the dewdrops on the seedlings in the field glisten like countless eyes suddenly popping open. I dim the sun so that dusk arrives earlier. Then I stare at the silhouette of myself on the distant horizon, in front of the setting sun. I wave at the silhouette waves back. Looking at the shadow of myself, I feel young again. This is a lovely time, just right for remembering.
Wow. Okay, so I don't remember that at all. And when I made my notes, I didn't go back, I guess, far enough to catch up.
This? They teach us about the Stars Our Destination program. They give us all of the fill-in-the-blanks from book 2 to the time gap to book 3.
Yep. Yep.
The 300 years, that Cheng Xin was...
So you know what that piece that you just read reminds me the most of? It reminds me of the game 3 Body Problem. And one of the ideas that I had early on, maybe in book one, was what if the universe is really a simulation or something like that, right? And we'll probably talk about this later, but one of the big questions that I mean, no, that happens now, right at the very beginning. We get a little bit of Yang Dong again. And one of the big questions she has is how has life changed the universe? And that is terrifying to her. And what if it is that life created this universe and none of this is real and it's some sort of simulation? That would fit in very well with the passage you just read. Now, whether or not that's true, I have no idea. There's really no evidence for that yet. But it would not shock me.
I was really happy to get that excerpt on Yang Dong. I had a lot of questions about, how she died and why she died and what perhaps role her mother had in her death.
Yeah.
And this really wrapped it up.
Yeah, I mean, like she discovered that her mother had done this terrible thing, and so she had lost not only her mom, but then she had lost physics, and there was nothing left for her to live for, really. So yeah, that was really sad that we had to revisit that. But the question then is, why do we revisit it? Like, why did that even happen in this book? And I think it's because of that line, right? She's talking to this young guy who's doing the simulation, and he says, life changed the earth, but it's not possible for life to change the universe because life is so rare. And I bet that's not true. Right? Like I think that's why we were exposed
Life's
to this.
not so rare. And
it's actually really
end
common.
Of part 2, it becomes abundantly clear that there's a whole lot more life out there.
Right. And so how has it changed the universe in some way, right? So I think that was a really interesting. We could have asked that question in a lot of ways, but asking it by going back to Yang Dong was really good, I think.
Yeah. This book started out with just kind of nothing but sad stuff. And I know you might not be ready to talk about it yet, but
let's do it.
The magician.
Okay.
That's it was fascinating and mysterious. Also, I was wondering if I was reading the wrong book for about 10 minutes.
Well, this again brings me back to the revolutionary stuff that we read in book 1.
Oh yeah, we read a whole book on this.
Well, I would read that book about this magician and the emperor and all that.
But her plight was sad.
Yeah.
And then Yang Dong was sad.
Yeah.
And then Tian Ming.
Yeah, Tian Ming.
So sad.
But I don't like him.
Why?
So look, I wrote this. Tian Ming is a real sad boy, right? That's what I wrote because he is, and God, he is pathetic. He is not sad. He is pathetic, and yes, he is dying, but he's my parents raised me to be kind of an elitist, and so I don't attach to anybody, and I have no loyalties, and he is selfish. He is cold,
self-absorbed.
He is he is self-absorbed. He is. I have this thing where I don't like movies about guys who just wait for the girl long enough that then it all works out for them, because I think that's weird and pathetic, and that's what he is. And so I immediately have this reaction against him for that. But he has not a shred of bravery in him to go talk to the girl and to put himself out there. He doesn't he even understands that he doesn't even have enough bravery to go die so that his family can be better off without him, and they're spending all their life savings on him or whatever. And he is not, to me, a sympathetic character.
Yeah.
And he's also, and for all these reasons, that's why they sent him into space, right? Because he's not a hero.
Yeah.
But I also feel that's a huge liability. And we don't have anything yet where Tian Ming comes back into the story.
Yeah, as far as we know, he's just drifting.
And if he comes back as the big bad, I will not be shocked.
Ooh.
I don't know if that's gonna happen.
So where I really veered from Tian Ming, my thinking, just Nicole, if I'm terminally ill and my only option is death, or my brain can live forever and travel space, I would excitedly choose space.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even though space is mostly kind of nothing as far as we know, and that seems like it could be boring, if we have the technology to keep my brain alive, we have the technology to create Sims Nicole to entertain my brain along its journey.
Yeah.
And that's just like what they did with Moriarty in Star Trek Next Generation when Moriarty gained sentience, and then he was like, but I can't leave the holodeck. So they created a little program for him, and he got to like live his life out in that program.
Yeah.
Make me a program. Let me learn and like read and learn musical instruments and whatever, you know.
But he's just dead right now, right? Like they shoot him off into space and he's just dead.
Just diverted path and.
Oh yeah. So yeah, nobody knows where he is. You know.
And how did they not set up a couple of spares along the way to like boost it back in bed? Like,
fair.
I
bet we have enough nukes. Yeah.
They were really on board with that one path.
You know, his whole arc. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, you go.
Okay. His whole arc really reminded me of Luoji's falling in love with this imaginary woman.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with that part. Like, it's a little creepy, I guess, like when you like really sit down and think about it. But I thought that part of book 2 was really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we really learned something from it, and that it, like Luoji learned something from it. And it gave him something that gave him the strength to go on and become a wall facer in a weird way. And so we have this story that is similar to what Tian Ming does. But he is just a sad boy, right? Like he's a nut and button.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's all.
Well, and we end up liking. Well, I end up liking Luoji by the end of, you know, his storyline. I really am fond of him,
right?
Even though he creeped me out at the beginning.
Yeah.
However, I did love Cixin Liu's building of suspense, telling Tian Ming's life story between the questions of, you know, if you wish to die, push 2. If you wish to not die, push 0. Those incremental stories. He's so good at that, and he does it several times.
Yeah.
And I love it every time. It really sucks me in.
Yeah. So what? Tian Ming like he inherits all this money, right? Goes and buys Cheng Xin a star, and that star plays like a major role in like the rest of history, right?
Yeah.
Because she is the only person to own a star.
Especially like, with planets.
We made that up.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for that part because like you just say somebody else does. Say somebody else also owns a star now, and then they do, and there's nothing to it. But
well, and like, okay, so it kind of lost me on that too because they're like, this has never been done before. Yes, it has. You can go to like www.ownyourownstar.com or whatever it's called.
Well, they mentioned that. And
they're like, well, that's fake, and yours isn't.
Yeah, that was weird. that was weird. I don't know.
It was weird, but it's what had to happen for.
Well, but so we're talking about Tian Ming. Let's talk about Cheng Xin a little bit.
Oh man, there's so much.
I mean, yeah, because most of the meat of this book is really talking about her, right? I mean, like you have the whole space arc, I suppose.
But she's our protagonist on Earth.
Yeah, she's our protagonist on Earth, and she's the character. Even in the space bit, you don't really get a feel for a lot of the characters. You don't get backstory or anything like that. But we do with her.
And that, I think, is the point of all of Tian Ming's storyline about her and descriptions about her. It's just so that we can build this image of who she is as a young person.
Yeah.
Cixin Liu's really building up what a like motherly type of person she is. Caring, attentive, all that. So do you see her differently than you see Ye Wenxi?
You know, I guess like they both in their own way have betrayed humanity, I suppose. Ye Wenxi did it purposefully, but Cheng Xin did it out of like naivete, I suppose, and I do see a difference there, I guess. I see them as somewhat different. What about you? Was that the right answer?
Oh, I don't have an answer. Just I got all the questions.
I do see them as different, right? And so that's really interesting. I noticed there was like this juxtaposition. We have this. We don't follow plans here. We just talk about what we want to talk about.
Getting juicy.
Yeah. We get this weird piece about this Trisolaran created art where they make this movie about these two people who never meet
different sides
of the Yangtze River, and one is in like this beautiful area and one is in like the highlands of Mongolia or wherever the river starts. I can't remember. And that story comes up again, hidden multiple times, right? But like the most immediate thing is sort of this like two ships in the night between Tian Ming and Cheng Xin, right? They are these two lovers that never meet. And she has this really beautiful life because she was adopted by this woman. She was adopted by a stranger as a child who was willing to give up her other relationships for her. Then she realized she never had a father. Her mom finds a dad who loves her mom because of her love for Cheng Xin. And she has like this really beautiful, trusting thing where these strangers get to keep coming in and like everything's happy, right? And it is stark difference from what Tian Ming has, where he just feels nothing for anybody. And he is like these highlands of Mongolia, right? Like he is that character from that play.
Heathcliff.
But could we not say the same thing about this difference between the life of Cheng Xin and Ye Wenxie, right? Like maybe they're not two like lover people, but they've had these two totally different experiences. I've forgotten the original question.
Is she? Do you see her differently
right.
than you see Ye Wenxie?
So I see them different for those reasons, right? Because Ye Wenxie does what she does because she's totally disillusioned with humanity, right? She's been living in these emotional highlands, and what Cheng Xin does, she does because she has been living in this
bubble,
right? In this beautiful area, and Cheng Xin's problem is that she is too trusting, right? That is her problem, and we can get to that bit a little bit later whenever we kind of like move through her story if you want, but or we'll do it now, whatever. You know, she says, you know, she never saw herself as a warrior. She sees herself as a protector. She never saw herself as someone who was going to have to hit the button. And so when the time comes to hit the button, she's like, oh,
I can't do that.
I can't do that. But she, not only does she think of herself as a protector, she thinks of herself as a protector, not a destroyer. And she wanted to maintain the balance until it was not needed. Because, you know, the Trisolarans have written for us this story of these two people. They've written for us this fairy tale. And Cheng Xin lives in this fairy tale where someday these two things that live... And so again, this story about the river comes up. It's a love story between humanity who has had it easy and the Trisolarans who have been living in these highlands, right? And the idea is that even though they've never met, they're made for each other. And in Cheng Xin's mind, they're going to meet and they're made for each other. And so we have to use this button until we don't need it, right? Where our technology is going to be so improved that we are at parity with the Trisolarans, and their culture is so improved that they're at parity with us, and we're all one happy family. Because that's all she's ever known. And then that's what kills us. That's what kills us.
Yeah. It became clear to me very quickly, and confirmed with the Trisolaran art and film industry, that they had learned how to deceive. I mean, it was immediately clear. And then they kind of like bred our ability to deceive out of us. You know,
or they at least picked somebody that could not deceive.
Well, and there was a comment about the look of the old hibernators against the modern people.
Right.
They have this distrust of those hibernators who knew what was hidden behind their expressions.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they've lost their own ability. They feel like they can trust the modern look more because it is more clear and telling
Right.
of their motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my words are missing. She's so taken into when she wakes up from her hibernation and she's in the modern world now. She's so taken in by how good everything is. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I love Cixin Liu's ability to like describe both Edens and hells on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
His new worlds when everything's shiny and fully functioning and safe, and it's beautiful. I mean, like, I would want to live there. As a reader, I'm like, this isn't right. Like, I know something's wrong here. But it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And his description of when it's not great is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Kind of talking about her. So, in this, in her, the reason we're interested in her is because she's chosen to be this sword holder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to see Luoji again, right?
Yeah.
Where he has become a literal wall facer.
True wall facer.
Right? Like the metaphorical has become phorical. Right? Not a word, I know. But so he's been like staring at this wall the whole time, and she's supposed to take up this mantle, I suppose. One of the main reasons that she is considered for being the sword holder is because she owns the star. They're like, you own a world, so you can save ours. That's a huge leap.
Yeah.
I don't follow right here, right? But whatever, right? That's the intellect of the future, I suppose. One other thing that was interesting about that little bit right there is so later on they say that Cheng Xin's biggest problem was that her biggest mistake was not looking at the problem from the perspective of the enemy. And I thought that was really good because, she's like, well, we can all be at peace now. But, the whole concept of the sword holder comes from the Sword of Damocles story where this guy gets to be king for a day and they have this sword hanging over his head so he gets to, like, enjoy and be the most powerful person. But, hey, don't forget you could die at any time. And we are holding that sword over them. And so there's no way, like, that we're just friendly, right? Like, there's this huge threat that we hold over them. And it's a threat that we end up using, right? So it's a threat that they're afraid of for good reason. So, I thought that was a very powerful line, I suppose. We can't talk about her early days, because I don't want to move on to the Australia stuff yet. We can't talk about her early days without talking about Thomas Wade.
Oh.
See, I kind of like him. He's a crazy person.
More than half of my notes when I was like flipping back, because I kind of annotate while I read, they're all comments like, what is wrong with this guy?
He is like hyper. So number one, he's a wall facer in the same way that Zhang Beihai was, right?
Yeah.
He is a self-appointed wall facer, and he's a good one. And they even talk about it later, right? I think Sofan says to Cheng Xin or somebody, he had 100%. We couldn't tell what was going on in his mind, right? He is. There's an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the guy is like a wild card, right? And he'll yell like wild card, and he'll jump out of the van and stuff like that. And that's what Thomas Wade is, right? He is the wild card.
He's horrible.
I see him as kind of like a MacArthur character. He's like always yelling at people, you must go forward. I have no idea who I would pick for him to be in the Netflix show. I want everybody to comment, who do you want to play Thomas Wade in a Netflix series? Go.
Gosh.
That's going to be a lot of fun. It looks like it'd be, they're going to pick Woody Harrelson.
I liked it when his arm got blown off.
Yeah. I'm calling it now, Woody Harrelson. I don't know why I think that, but that's what they're going to do, right?
He made the most toxic think tank. Be creative!
Yeah.
Like, but your idea's trash!
But I mean, most of that part, I didn't... That part of the story was interesting, and it's going to be building up for whatever is happening with Tian Ming later.
What if nothing happens with Tian Ming later?
I'd like that too. I kind of like storylines that don't go anywhere, but I also like tragedy, and so I'm a big fan of this book so far. Right? I think that part of the book for me didn't for this reading, it did not contribute a whole lot to what happened later, right? She wasn't like, they mentioned like, oh, you're part of PIA, and so that's a plus in your favor for being a sword holder. But they chose her because she owned a planet.
Yeah.
And so that part of the story didn't do a whole lot for me. But they tried to give up like 6 times, and he was like, nope, figure it out. And they kept figuring it out, right? And so we can say whatever we want for his methods, but the man got results.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, he's wretched.
Let's see. And he would have been a great sword holder for these reasons, right?
He would have
because
been
of his
the
intensity.
only choice.
He was the only choice, yeah.
Yeah.
She gets this, Cheng Xin gets an assistant. Her name is AA.
Yeah.
The footnote in my book said it's supposed to sound like AI.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of led to believe that maybe she's a robot person. It mentions later that she did not age whenever they put Cheng Xin into hibernation because of her eyes. That she looked just as young as she had always been.
Oh.
And so I wonder if she's not an AI, right? Like there's something going on with the Chinese character and her like Roman letters, right? Whatever, English letters. So I don't know. But early on in the book, she has this conversation with Cheng Xin where Cheng Xin's like negotiating what to do with her star because they're trying to buy it from her. And she tells her, in our age, we do not see duty and conscience as ideals. And I thought that was really interesting too, because they are clearly things we think should be ideals. But if you don't use conscience and duty, then there's like a sense of practicality that you would say would be your ideals, right? Like we do whatever's necessary. And our ideals change with time. And a lot of times we try to choose, cultures choose things for ideals that are difficult for them to do. There's no culture that says like, it's ideal being lazy, right? Because that's easy. You choose things that are hard. And there was a point in time in human society in this story where doing the practical thing was hard. But the people who were doing the practical things were people like Ray Diaz, right? And people that they stoned.
Yeah.
And then what's interesting about her saying this is that the people who did the practical thing are the guys on Bronze Age, and they threw all those guys in jail.
Yeah.
Right? Those guys did the practical thing. They were eating people and doing all this like crazy stuff, trying to like get out of the solar system until they turned back around. And so even though she says duty and conscience are not ideals, I wonder what really is, because the only evidence we have for this is this one character saying these things, but I don't see anybody else really behaving that way.
Yeah, no. They're still just fickle pickles. Mad at Luoji. Mad at Cheng Xin. Like,
Luoji's not popular again, right? And then he is popular again. So he goes all the way through.
Bless him.
Yeah. Let's see. So she becomes sword holder. She fails, right? Immediately.
10 minutes.
But they had been planning for it, right? And they kind of make mention of it because we see the second Trisolaran fleet coming at full on light speed.
Light speed.
And they're really, we have to respect the fact that they're rolling the dice on this one, because they don't know what she would do. I think they said in their simulations it was like 50% or 60%.
But then when Sofan was talking to her, she said it was only 10%.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
10%? Okay, well.
So they lied.
Well, but still, there's a 10% chance that they're going to pull the trigger, know? And, you still have gravity running around, but they were quite confident, I suppose, in their droplets. But they've been planning this for ages. And, what if like she got sick or something and had to delay it 2 weeks? Then we would have seen the fleet coming and we would have hit the button.
Yeah.
So there was some element of gambling involved in their response to all that. And then they take all of humanity and they stick them in these reservations, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's not cool. But they made us resettle naked, right? Without our technology or whatever. And it was only so long ago, at the beginning of this very book, when we were talking about having the Trisolarans resettle naked, right? I don't really feel that bad for the humans, because we were about to do this to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just different ant piles fighting over land.
Right.
That's all it is. I thought, when you force everyone to resettle in one spot, like Australia, it keeps them, the Trisolarans, from having to destroy the planet in an attempt to destroy the humans.
Right. Well, I mean, that's all it was, right? When they started blowing up everything, and it was like, you guys can eat each other. You know, they were just making us do the work for them. You know.
Yeah, golly.
When
Sofan declares that, we just eat each other, no big deal, reduce the population. Cheng Xin reflects that whatever remains after that might not be human.
Right.
This series makes it very clear that whether we take the cosmic route or stay on Earth, after our contact with an outside life form, there is no remaining human.
Right. We're changed.
Earthlings are changed.
Yeah. I was laughing about that whole part because it didn't really address, it was like, most of the humans, whatever, but like, boy, I bet there's not a whole lot of Americans there. There's just something in us where, like, we're gonna die out here or whatever, right? Like, I think there'd be a lot of dudes.
The goofy rogue ones, like, on the suicide missions, fighting the...
There'd be a lot of us. Because, like, I'll be honest, if aliens showed up and they're like, all right, y'all all turn up in Australia, we're gonna kill you, I'm like, I think you're gonna kill me anyway.
Right, so...
I'm just gonna hang out here.
Fighting.
Yeah.
See if I can take some down on the way.
Let's see what happens. That part of the book, again, was really interesting, but it was almost like a detour because it came and went all in, I think, part 2. Like, it was...
and they're like, okay, go back.
Yeah. And it was because they lost interest because of gravity sending out the gravitational waves, and so the planet is no longer useful to them. And so now they have to go find somewhere else. Yeah.
Let's talk about the space.
You want to do space?
The track of this.
Can I double check real quick?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So there's a couple other notes that I had made about this. One is, Sofan says, humanity feels entitled to life.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good one, too, because Trisolarans don't. And I have a comment later in my, like, general comments section. But that is true, right? We feel, when we talk about humanity, we feel like we should be here until the end. And that we have every right to be, when that's really just something we've made up.
It's just because we're sentient.
Yeah. But because of the Trisolaran evolution, they probably don't have that. And so they're trying to, like, beat that into us through this whole, like, weird battle royale situation, right?
You remember Ye Wenqi's forest friend who was saving the birds? Was that Mike Evans? Or was that someone else?
Yeah, that was Mike Evans. Yeah.
He said the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we think that we're what deserves to be protected?
Yeah. So they go Fortnite Australia on everybody and hope that fixes everything. Let's see. Yep, that was my last note for that one. So we can talk about space. What you got for space?
Well, okay. So there's kind of 2 parts of the space arc, right? There's when Bronze Age gets brought back in.
Yep.
Sneak attack. You're on trial. This was not a celebration for you to return home. And then gravity going out after blue space.
Right.
And then the shenanigans.
Right. Well, so let's come back to Bronze Age for a second, right?
Okay.
We made this comment again about, like, not being human anymore.
Yeah.
And because we've all subscribed to this Dark Forest idea, Bronze Age is a huge liability. Not because they have a gravitational wave or anything like that, but they could send out our signal to somebody, or they could tell us where they're at or whatever. And, like, there's this rogue ship out there. And so it's in everybody's interest that they come back. And so they trick these guys into coming back. And it's kind of sad. They all think their family's out there and everything, and then they're like, you're under arrest, right? And I don't think I've talked about this yet, but I've thought this in every book we've read so far, whenever we get to, like, the future bits, right? Anything that is past our present day. That some of this really seems like you trick a ship into coming back, and then you're just like, you're all going to go to jail now. And that just seems like made up, right? Like, it doesn't, like really, can you do that? It doesn't seem legitimate, right? It doesn't seem like something you have the authority to do. But I was thinking about it some more this weekend, and it's really not that shocking because there's no precedent for this. What do you do when there's a terrible battle? There's 2 surviving ships, and so one ship kills the other ship so that it can survive. And there are some precedents. Like, let's not pretend like there's not. There's precedents on the sea here, on planet Earth. There's a really interesting book called The Speluncean Explorers that is about these, like, 8 people who get caught in a cave, and they eat some of them so that they can survive, and then it's about like these Supreme Court cases and how they decide whether or not they're guilty of anything. And nothing like that had ever happened, so there was no precedent. And I think about the future and how many things like that will happen when there's aliens and there's no precedent, right? If there is some dude in West Virginia who comes along an alien spaceship and that guy shoots the alien in the head with a shotgun, and then there's a full-on alien invasion, like, are we going to try that guy for murder? Is it murder? And we're just going to like make something up and do it, you know? And in an age of unprecedented things, there are going to be unprecedented laws and reactions, and what we think of as legitimate actions for governments is just going to go totally out the window. Yeah. And it's going to come down to whoever has the biggest stick makes the rules, right? And we saw a lot of that in Australia. You know, just with the different factions that had weaponry or not, they get to determine how things work. And so I just felt like the Bronze Age thing was unfair. But I don't live in this time. And I don't have the same fears, you know. So that was all.
Totally unfair.
Yeah. Well, and especially with how fickle everybody is, right? They're going to be cool with them in like 50 years.
Pickles. Yeah, they'll make a statue, a Bronze Age statue to commemorate the heroism. They wear me out.
Yep.
The masses. The masses.
Yeah, they wear me out now.
Yeah, but it sounded like I said something else.
Oh. So let's talk about blue space and gravity. Right?
Yeah.
So again, this is one of those sections where I felt like it was almost its own story. And there is
long enough to be its own story.
For sure. There is a movie that I'm a huge fan of that I will suggest to everyone called Pandorum. And it's sort of like a space horror, but it's also a mystery. I won't say anything else about it. You've watched it with me before, whether you remember it or not. And it kind of reminded me of that, right? Like, what's going on and why are these people like missing their legs and, you know, like weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed it. It was good.
Cixin Liu did a great job building up the suspense of what is going on.
Yeah.
You know, why is there this circular hole in the middle of his wall, and where do legs go? But when the guy's heart was removed from his body,
that was good.
I had to reread that 3 times because I did not understand what was happening until I remembered that first part of the book that I thought I was reading the wrong book. Right.
That was really good. So, so let's jump back and talk about that thing again, right? Like, so they enter this 4th dimensional bubble or whatever, where they have these pockets they can pop in and out of. And it's not until we get to this point that we understand what was happening with this magician woman at the beginning of the book.
I need to reread that part now.
And so they at some point, the characters on the ship say, you know, it's highly likely that there are other bubbles, right, throughout the universe or whatever. And that, I think they say wrinkles or something, but that the Earth has passed through one. And on May 3rd of, 13 whatever, to May 28th or whatever, it did. And this woman just happened to find one of these holes, and she was able to go into it, navigate the 4th dimension, and do all these different things. And so what's deceiving about it, though, is at the beginning they say this fragment came and went. And so you're led to believe that it's something small.
Like sophonic.
Yeah, but that's not it at all. It's this huge thing that the solar system was moving through. And that was the issue.
How wild.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm just skipping around, but like, what are the laws of physics inside of that dimension? Because as they approached the ring did not grow in size. So the speed of light is different.
Boom. Right. Yeah, I guess. Or somehow it went from small to medium to like, hey, you're here now, right? Just immediately.
But that means the speed of light is not consistent.
That's true, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, like, I don't know.
Sorry.
What are the laws of showing this on Netflix? Right? How is that gonna happen?
Yeah.
The thing it reminds me the most of is in Interstellar. They go into a black hole, and there's like some shenanigans there at towards the end of that movie. And it looks crazy, and I imagine they'll try to do something like that, but it won't do justice to what he is trying to explain without being able, because he can't tell you what it looks like.
He does a pretty good job.
He does a good job of it. Yeah.
I feel like I could see it.
Yeah.
I just forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Keep going.
You were talking about the ring and the speed of light.
Do you think they're going to find a way to harness the power of these bubbles and use them as wormholes?
So
To some extent.
that is a note that I made somewhere was like I think like what is the point of this fourth dimensional thing? Most things are coming back around. So like number one, there's life in there, but
Lots
number two,
of dead fish puddled into one spot.
I think it will come back around somehow, and we will use it, or at the very least, we will find some way to harness the energy of the things like popping out of it. Maybe, right? I don't know. That's possible, I suppose.
That ring made me real sad.
Yeah, what's that? I am a tool. Right.
And like, can I have your paperweight?
Yep. Yeah, that part was really good.
And then Doc was like, he didn't even get to enjoy it for very long.
Yep. Yeah, it was. I mean, this whole book's tragic. Right? So, but there is the thing that we really should take away from the conversation with the tomb, the ring, is that number one, the things in this fourth dimension don't consider the things in 3 dimensions to be that dangerous.
Right, not at all.
Right. But there is something in that fourth dimension that was able to basically destroy that dimension and shrink it. Right.
Was it something that destroyed?
Something did it. He said, are all the fish here? And he said, no, not the fish that.
Gotcha.
Not the fish that did this. And then they ask, are there other pockets? And that's when he stops talking to him.
Yeah.
But so there's something else running around out there. I don't know. I really don't know what to think about that.
And where is it going from here?
Yeah, I have no good guesses. What's interesting about having stopped at part 2 is that there's like no storyline where you're like, oh, this is going to continue, right? Like, it's all wrapped up, and I'm not sure what happened.
I was so relieved. There was that whole story where we learned about the cook who really had the watch control of the gravitational wave. The captain who also had his little watch. The building of the story. He's kind of creeping on that girl on the other ship. That was weird. But like he pressed his button and it didn't work. The captain pressed his button and it didn't work.
Right.
And then when they finally have a chance to vote and choose once the ship's taken over and all that stuff. And they do it. I was so relieved that they pushed the button. Yeah.
Well, so let's hop back for a second. The button doesn't work because Blue Space had, in the fourth dimension, gone and dismantled it in the same way that they had dismantled the droplets.
Which, how on earth, if they were getting like zoomed in on so fast on the ring, how were they able to line themselves up just right and like reach in and do what they need to do?
But they did it. And so what's interesting about that is it's the first instance of humanity's fourth dimensional warfare, which I thought was really cool, right? Like they get 60 Marines or whatever onto this ship. Plus, so there is somebody else there in that scene where the guy gets his heart ripped out. They have the guy, I can't remember his name, the sergeant or whatever from Blue Space, who was standing there talking to the cook. And then there was somebody else in the fourth dimension who has removed his heart and stuck it somewhere else. There's another person that you can't see because they're in a dimension above.
Well, it was still attached. They were like, oh, we can fix it.
It wasn't attached.
I thought it was attached.
It was not attached. It just had like the 2 like wires hanging out of it.
And they were like, well, we can pop that back in a jiffy.
Well, so that's his point. That he can, because they just stick it back in. The guy in the fourth dimension, he's not talking like, hey, we can get him to your surgeons and do it.
Gotcha.
He's saying, we can do this. There's a dude over here who's just going to stick it back in there.
This ain't operation. Like, putting that sucker right back in, you got to connect things.
I don't know.
What are you just tying in a knot?
Maybe it was connected, but the impression I got was that they, from the fourth dimension, the Blue Space crew, was going to be the one to fix him.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's kind of gross.
That was weird. I had to read that so many times to make sense of what was happening.
They
pushed the button.
Yeah, so I found that to be really powerful too, right? Where they didn't make that last guy push the button. They all got involved and they all hit it. For a scene where you're destroying humanity, it really was powerful. Good teamwork, guys. Right? Like, I don't know.
It was thoughtful.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a rash,
right.
No whammy stop. It was...
I like that scene a lot.
Yeah. I liked... So right before Guan, the scientist, the civilian scientist, right before he and the psychiatrist thought that they were about to die.
Mm-hmm.
They were having this conversation about the universe.
Yes.
And Guan basically said, our universe, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
What he says is,
Parable.
because the universe is expanding and because of the speed of light, the universe is a corpse that is puffing up. That was a really great metaphor, I thought, right? Like, it's already dead. It doesn't know... It's already so big that it can't handle itself. Yeah, that was really something. What was up with his whole, like, 330,000 thing? I don't understand.
I don't get it.
Can somebody explain that to me?
It happened so fast, and I was like, this is a thing now?
I went back and, like, looked for it twice, and then gave up. But I wasn't sure what was going on there. If you can, spoiler-free, explain that part to me, I'd be very appreciative.
Yeah, that was weird. I really liked Guan.
Yeah, he was cool. Yeah, and so early on, he went into the fourth dimension before anybody knew what it was.
Yeah,
because he had a dream. Yeah,
I was so free.
Yeah, and it gave him claustrophobia coming back because he couldn't see into everything.
Can you imagine? If you had the opportunity to go into the fourth dimension?
No,
you wouldn't do it.
No.
Why?
I don't like swinging. I feel like I'd throw up in there. No.
I've got one of those nausea bands.
I love roller coasters. I don't like swinging. I don't know, man. The way they're explaining it, it was vomitrocious.
How? So, I mean, we definitely have a strength being from the three-dimensional world that we can go in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Is it without consequence that we go in and out? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, but again, this is one of those things. Like, does it change you? You know, you've come into this, contact with this force that you've never had, and how does it change you?
I mean, and this is new contact,
right?
You know, and I don't remember what the line is, but there was another line in here that referenced 2001: A Space Odyssey and that development that happens,
right?
That quick development that happens after contact.
Right.
I mean,
there's a conversation about the Trisolaran's like culture explosion. And I think that's the part where it is. So some thoughts I have about this 4D and all that is the 4D world is drying up.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that the 3D world could dry up?
I mean, if the 4D can, then...
Right. Could it collapse into 2 dimensions and then, like, that's how we are screwed? Because we live in the 3 dimensions. And, like, what if somehow height or whatever, right? Like, I don't know.
And this goes back to the whole, you are bugs, yeah, but we haven't eradicated bugs. Well, the bugs are going to kill us.
And so here's another thing, right? Is and I'm not 100% sure about all this. The 4th dimension here is clearly some sort of spatial dimension, right? And that's how they talk about it. But we oftentimes will talk about the 4th dimension as being time.
Mm-hmm.
And time is definitely some sort of dimension. Who cares what number it is, right? One thought I also had was when we talk about this past outside of time, what if there's some sort of collapse of that dimension? Right? That's what... And so, like, I don't know, but maybe there's something going on there. Yeah? So then I have another thought. What if we have 2-dimensional creatures come into the 3rd dimension, and then they start talking to us?
Shit.
And is that not what sophons are in some degree, right? Like, they are multitudes lower dimensions. Or, they spread them out or whatever, and then they pop into ours. And so we know that that's possible on some level. But I don't think, like, either whether going up or down on the dimensional scale or the shrinking of some dimension, I don't think we're done here.
Right.
So I think...
There's no going back. Once you learn about a thing, you just keep barreling towards it.
Yeah. One other, like, general thought I had was there's this thing where humanity has decided that maybe the whole dark forest idea... No, wait, I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that. I think I read 2 or 3 pages ahead, and I don't think I need to say that part. So one other thing was that they make mention about humanity just, like, thinking that we're supposed to be improving. And it's definitely an idea that we have now, that, like, in 100 years things will be better than they are today. And that is not an idea humanity has always had. Because, like, ancient Egypt was better than later Egypt, and Rome was better than the Middle Ages, and, X dynasty in China was better than, Y dynasty later.
Yeah.
but it's really been since like the Industrial Revolution that we've had this concept.
Everything's on the up.
And Trisolaris does not have this idea.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't. And so whenever like anything bad happens to humans, we're like, oh. Like, what do you mean it's not getting better? Because like we're so pampered, right? And in a weird way, the Trisolarans are like jealous of that idea, right? Like it has made us soft.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. Oh, sissies, as they called us.
Oh, is it
in the book?
Okay.
Well, as the old like the hibernators called the new folks, called them sissies.
Fair.
That's a word.
Whatever.
Unrelated.
Okay.
Back to the staircase project.
Yeah.
I really loved Mikhail Vladimov.
Vladimov? Yeah.
Vladimov.
Yeah. He was
and
a nice guy.
I was so sad when he died.
Wade kills him. So I thought maybe he had killed himself, but later on Wade is like, oh yeah, I give him cancer, right? Like the idea was that they were going to harvest his brain and shoot him off into space.
And then it was not retrievable.
Right. And so they were like, well, maybe we radiated him too much or whatever. But he also might have killed himself. I don't think that should be
ruled out.
Yeah, ruled out.
It made me so sad.
Yeah.
He was cool. Wade is awful. And he's still going to be here in parts 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I have nothing to look forward to.
Whenever I started reading this, and whenever you like see things on YouTube or wherever, we've been very careful about not seeing any spoilers or anything. But a lot of things that you'll see are like, this is the most horrifying sci-fi ever written or whatever. And so far, nothing truly horrifying has happened. Like nothing. I've read some books that were like really powerful, and I just sit there and be like, oh, right, and just like in my head, or like I've seen movies that do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Jurassic Park, horrifying.
Well, so like when I watched The Fountain, I don't know if people like that, whatever. It's one of my favorite movies. Whenever the credits roll, I'll just sit there for 10 straight minutes just staring at nothing, just like in myself, right? And I haven't had that quite happen to me yet. But and it's an issue of like medium, I suppose, and a lot of things that have happened could be described much more horrifyingly, and that's not what I'm looking for. But when you sit down and like think about all these ideas, like think about being a brain that's just like shipped off into space, like that's really horrifying.
Yeah.
And you think about everybody being put into Australia and like the conditions they're in,
that is
really horrifying. And then you think about like, well, what if everybody gave you a button that could destroy 2 whole worlds? That's pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
And then being on space and eating each other, that's pretty horrifying, right? Like, and so I'm willing to give it space. I don't. I guess my point is like when I've seen these descriptions so far, having not finished the book but finished 2 1/3, nothing has happened yet that I would find to warrant that description of this story.
But I repeatedly see that.
But it is still a very powerful and thought-provoking story, and that is a better thing than to be the most horrifying thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's dark, and it is sad, and it is not the most emotionally compelling thing I've ever read, but it's still sad on like so many different levels,
Yeah.
I still think that the Dark Forest idea is like the right way to approach things. Like, I think it is, and the Trisolaran showed you that, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that I think last week where
we've learned this lesson. How have they not learned this lesson?
The Trisolaran? Oh, the humans?
The humans.
Yeah, exactly. I've only been reading for 3 weeks. Y'all have 300 years.
Yeah, I've been living through it.
Yeah. But you can either choose to act or not act, and then that only works until somebody decides to kill you, and then it's over with.
I had misflipped on my Kindle and made it back to the author's note at the end of book 1, and he actually talked about that why on earth would you assume that the other would be on friendly terms?
Right.
That you just can't. You can't take that risk.
Right. It's the change the suspicion idea, right?
Yeah. I mean, so if we would have read that, that would have been.
And that is Cheng Xin's greatest sin, right? Is because she lives in this movie world, this fairy tale.
Yeah.
She is waiting for humanity to fall in love with this other culture that has clearly fallen in love with us. And then you know, she wants to be a mother, right? She wants to. She actually she says, "I'm a woman, not a warrior," right? Like she wants to nurture this love between these two cultures, and it ain't happening.
Yeah, I don't blame her for her thought process, but she should have pressed the button.
Well, the fault. I agree. Generally, humanity decides that the fault lies with the people who chose her, which was them, right? They say like they'll do anything to like forget that like, oh, we all picked her by public opinion, right? It's our fault. It always is. We pick dumb people. Look, we have sword holders today, don't we? Do we pick dumb folks to be our sword holders?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every
time.
but like it's an impossible job, right? So,
yeah. Well, as we have seen through Luoji's fate,
yeah,
there is nothing he can do,
right,
that would please the people.
Well, and realistically, the person you want holding it as an ultimate deterrence is the Thomas Wade character, right? Mm. But could you imagine us like getting a Thomas Wade president? I suppose I can't. But could you imagine that? Like, the guy, like, I don't know if he was going to hit the button or not, right? Like, he might.
He might hit the button.
And that, I guess that has, like, special... You know, I've been thinking about the Dark Forest and the deterrence and everything in just relations to, like, our own, you know, current events. Mm-hmm. You know, because, like, we're actively engaged in that kind of deterrence right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And what lessons do we learn from this and how to think about all these other things. And one thing that they say in maybe the last book was, you know, it's not a true Dark Forest because we're all human here, but that might just be an excuse, right? Like, is that real? Is that true? Like, is there enough common experience that we can really understand each other? And like, obviously, yes. But when you get to like the level of that kind of person, maybe not. You know, I don't know. I just don't know. That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, that was a lot, and this was a long episode.
Yeah.
But we hope to hear your comments or read your comments below. And we'll see you next Sunday for parts 3 and 4.
Yep.
Of Death's End by Cixin Liu.
And one more thing. This week we are going to put out a video where we are going to announce what our next book is. The idea being that we've really only got 2 or 3 weeks until we're starting that one, depending on how we do our syllabus episode. And we want to give you time to get that book if you want it. Mm-hmm. The only thing that we know about you guys is that you'll like this book. And unfortunately, it's over. So we have no options. And we're going into something totally different. And after something that is dark and sad, this one might be dark and sad. I don't know. I am led to believe that it's going to be somewhat humorous, but I don't know.
I don't know.
We're going to see. But we're doing something totally different, and we want you there for it, right?
Yeah.
You know, this channel is not about the remembrance of Earth's past, and it's not about sci-fi. It's about us reading books.
Reading books. And so we know that you like Earths of Remembrance Past, but we like you. So we hope that you'll try out, you know, maybe try something different that you've not read before, or a style that you haven't read before.
So tune into that video, and if you are interested, you can do some homework on what that book's about, and then we'll begin that.
And the book, I had never heard of it before, but it is available, I think, from your public library, ebook and audiobook apps. It seems to be pretty widely available. So
we hope to see you there.
Yeah, you'll hear from us again.
See you next week.
Bye.